An 84-year-old retired veteran with scars has one luxurious wish: to become a first-grade student at the local elementary school. But facing this former hero, the teacher shows great disdain. He believes that children are the future hope of the country, while the elderly are just a burden on the economy. The resources of a free school are scarce. What are you, a dying person, mixing in for? He scolded him for being disrespectful due to his age. Despite their rejection, Maruge refused to give up. The vice principal had no choice but to make things difficult by stating that school needed not only notebooks, but also 2 pencils. Without these, he couldn't enroll. I thought this would make the old man give up, but he underestimated Maruge's determination to enroll, ignoring the calls of old friends drinking by the roadside. The next day he returned to the school gate, this time bringing pencils and notebooks. However, the vice principal not only broke his promise but also became angry. He yelled at the old man, mocking his tattered clothes and saying students must wear uniforms, which he couldn't afford. After saying that, he left without looking back. However, Maruge's behavior caught the attention of Principal Jenny, who was very curious why someone over 80 still wanted to attend school. Maruge's powerful answer is that I want people. But this still didn't impress Jenny. After all, it's an elementary school, and resources are indeed limited. Maruge, though a bit frustrated, showed no signs of retreat. On the way home, he walked with a limp, but each step was calm and resolute. Upon returning home, he sold the only old hen in the house. He bought second-hand clothes suitable for sweaters and shirts at a stall. Unable to afford pants, he cut his long pants into shorts. And instead of new shoes, he cleaned his old ones. With everything ready, he limped back on the road to pursue his studies. The elderly man, dressed in a student outfit and leaning on a cane, seems rejuvenated, and even his once hesitant steps appear lighter. Seeing this stubborn old man again, the vice principal warned Jenny not to be soft-hearted, or she wouldn't be able to explain to the board later. However, Jenny was already moved by the old man's spirit. Under pressure from parents and leaders, she felt hesitant and didn't know how to explain to the children's parents. Maruge gazed into Jenny's eyes and sincerely replied, "I will be a good student, and I will study hard." The simple and sincere answer finally moved Jenny. Seeing the eager elderly man before her, Jenny felt a pang of compassion. As a teacher, imparting knowledge was her duty. Due to the rules and pressure, he had already refused Maruge twice, but this time he couldn't reject him again. Ignoring the vice principal's objections, he opened the wooden gate. Maruge was as happy as an 80-year-old child. Fearing that Jenny might change her mind, he limped but walked swiftly to the classroom. Thus, this 84-year-old elder finally stepped into the school's gate, officially becoming a first-grade student at the local elementary school. The reason Maruge was so determined to enter the school dates back to a government broadcast he heard a few days ago. That day, the Kenyan government suddenly announced a universal free education policy, which created ripples in Maruge's quiet life. He originally lived in a remote mountain village in Kenya, working from sunrise to sunset for decades, wanting to live a simple life. However, this announcement made him determined to learn to read before he dies. Because there is a very important letter for him, he must read it in person. The next day, people gathered in groups to rush to the school, but the school was just a few simple wooden houses, and along the way, the children were like wild horses set free. The horses are chasing and playing in the school, while parents anxiously wait like ants on a hot pan, as there are simply too many people signing up. The few teachers in the school are surrounded and overwhelmed. At that moment, Maruge arrived at the school gate, and the opening scene unfolded. Gaining admission is fraught with difficulties, but tougher challenges lie ahead, because Maruge has poor vision and hearing. Even though she is the tallest in the class, Jenny still arranged for her to sit in the front row. A hand that can hold a rifle to defend a country cannot hold a small pencil. Jenny has to teach her the correct way to hold it, step by step. When she wrote her first letter, the over 80-year-old veteran's heart filled with joy. As the oldest elementary school student in the area, some parents noticed him, and his old friends who drink on the roadside also noticed him and teased him for being a student. Maruge is unfazed. After returning home, he continues to study diligently, devotedly, with little regard for sleep or food. Maruge's dedication makes Jenny very happy, and the students don't want to let him down when they come forward to write. After student Xiaowu finished dancing, Jenny asked him to write 6 in front. but Maluch showed no reaction until Xiaowu nudged him a few times, and only then did he realize. After class, the kids are in the playground. While everyone laughed and played, he sat alone, seeming out of place. At that moment, a little girl with mobility issues approached him. She asked if he was unwell or sick, wondering why he couldn't hear the teacher. When she learned he had hearing difficulties, the little girl sincerely said that when she grew up, she would become a doctor to help fix his ears. Listening to the child's soft voice and looking at their tender face, Maluge's eyes became watery. Behind his deep and bright red gaze, there seems to be many stories hidden. During the class assignment check, the vice principal, already annoyed with Maruge, found that his pencil was not sharpened properly according to the rules, and immediately ordered him to sharpen it. Maruge's traumatic early experiences instilled in him a fear of sharp objects like pencils, causing him to nearly faint while sharpening one. Seeing the situation was not right, Jenny hurriedly helped him outside the classroom to get some air and learned some hidden truths from him. Handsome invaders looted and committed atrocities in Kenya without restraint. Unable to bear humiliation, Maruge chose to join the Free Army to resist colonial rule, but faced brutal persecution. He was imprisoned in a detention camp, where they pierced his eardrum with a sharpened pencil to force him to abandon his beliefs. After hearing his story, Jenny felt a deep respect. Over time, the children gradually grew fond of this gentle senior, often surrounding her to hear her legendary stories. Sometimes, the children will shout freedom slogans together under her leadership. However, Vice Principal felt that Maluge's presence would bring trouble to the school, and soon he found himself feeling down. During the break that day, Maruge saw a bullying incident on the playground and directly grabbed his cane to teach the mischievous student a lesson. However, this scene was caught by the visiting school board member, who mistakenly thought Maruge was the aggressor. He erupted in anger, stating that Maruge should attend adult school, and mocked Maruge's people as rough barbarians. Upon learning that Director Xiao's kin served the British, Maluge became more agitated, as his family had been brutally killed by them. He believed this was due to the atrocities committed by Director Xiao's clan. In order to prevent Jenny from being implicated because of him, Maruge could only leave with disappointment. To help Maruge return to school, Jenny met with the Secretary General of the Education Bureau to ask if Maruge could attend her primary school, but the Secretary General directly refused. If there is a Maruge, elders will crowd into the primary school, taking away the limited resources of children. Education resources are crucial because children are Kenya's future. Jenny could not refute his point. After leaving the Education Bureau, she immediately found Maruge and regretfully informed him that he must drop out. Maruge is very disappointed, but that hasn't extinguished his thirst for knowledge. The next day, he sets off on his educational journey again, this time aiming for a distant adult school. On the road, someone called for him to get in the car, but the penniless Maruge couldn't afford the fare. He could only limp into the city under the sun with his cane, only to find everything before him was a disappointment. Educational resources in rural primary schools are scarce, and parents fight for enrollment. Adult education facilities are well equipped, yet the students are unmotivated. The learning environment is poor. Teachers shout in class while students are unruly. This confuses Maruge, as such a rare learning opportunity is wasted. Compared to innocent children, these mature adults have become self-destructive failures. In the end, Maruge had no choice but to leave. After returning to the village, he braved the heavy rain to find Jenny and asked for help, revealing the true reason he wanted to learn to read. "I must read the letter myself and understand it. That's why. You need to go to school to learn to read and write. The adult school is too chaotic, and I can't learn anything. I hope to return to school for classes." Jenny called Director Xiao, but he was uninterested and rejected her directly. This made Maruge very angry. No wonder Director Xiao's relatives colluded with the British back then. They are all heartless people. After calming down, Maruge came to school, sang a song with his classmates, and then bid them farewell with a heavy heart. "Sheep can't read or write. Everyone must work hard in their studies. Otherwise they'll end up like me, just an old man." After hearing this, Jenny was deeply moved. He suddenly had a brilliant idea. Since Maruge couldn't be a student here, he could be his assistant. This way, he could continue to audit classes and receive individual tutoring afterward. Maruge lived up to Jenny's expectations. He not only excelled academically, but also helped Jenny maintain a good classroom atmosphere. He also enjoyed bonding with the children privately. "I thought these peaceful and happy days would last forever. But instead, a bigger storm arrived. Someone secretly filmed Maruge returning to school, leading to extensive local media coverage. Soon, the 80-year-old man in elementary school attracted major media attention. They rushed in, all coming to the school to interview Maruge. Facing the reporters, Maruge remained calm and composed. When asked about his motivation for attending school, he answered that the power of freedom in books is one of the ways for us to escape poverty. Soon, his deeds spread worldwide through media coverage. Once a person becomes famous, various voices emerge. In Maruge's case, some praise it while others oppose it. In Maruge's area, there are many who believe he is too old to take up educational resources. Some extreme parents even blame his presence for their children's poor academic performance. As public discontent grows, many parents have started protesting at the school entrance. No matter how much Jenny emphasizes that Maruge is very helpful for the children's learning, they remain unmoved. This is solely a release of their inner dissatisfaction and anger. Their demand is to expel Maruge from school. Seeing the emotionally agitated villagers in front of him, Maruge could only helplessly hide at the back of the classroom. At this moment, he thought of his family who died at the hands of the colonizers. He gave everything for the country's independence. Yet in the end, he couldn't even have one request for learning fulfilled. Confronting this group of Ni, he feels an immense sense of absurdity and irony towards those he once risked his life to protect. This afternoon, Xiaowu's father was called to the school. The vice principal thinks Xiaowu's math grades need improvement. Otherwise, she may be held back. However, Xiaowu's father retorts that the school wastes educational resources on an old man, which is why they didn't teach his child well. He runs a grocery store, so Xiaowu's math can't be that bad. Repeated. After the principal finished yelling, he saw Maruge teaching the children to dance, which made them even more furious. He then left the school cursing. A few days later, 3 luxury cars arrived in this impoverished area. The grandeur of the cars contrasted sharply with the local poverty. However, the Nairobi officials who got out were friendly. First, Yi and Jenny shook hands, followed by Yi and Maruge. Some officials even handed out candy to the children, creating a harmonious and joyful atmosphere. Amid the hustle and bustle, the officials' assistants pulled Jenny aside and coldly asked, "What about our share?" Jenny doesn't know what she means. The assistant grabs his hand and says to stop playing dumb. With so many reporters, "Brother Ma must have paid you a lot. What about our share?" Jenny was bewildered. He pushed the student away in fear. From that day on, Jenny began to receive various threatening phone calls. Then sometimes parents would even stop her on the street. Back home, Jenny told her husband who worked in the city about this matter. He was very worried and rushed back home immediately. That night she received an anonymous call saying she was a fool. While she was away, Jenny was fooling around with other men, just a typical promiscuous woman. Although her husband understands her well, she still feels awkward hearing others say that. While Jenny was being slandered, Maruge was also troubled. Xiaowu's father brought some people to Maruge's doorstep. "I know the reporter gave you a lot of money. I want my share too." Maruge doesn't have Jenny's patience. He told her to get lost. Xiaowu's father runs a convenience store and is a notable figure in the village. Feeling embarrassed after being scolded, he called some delinquents, gave them some coins, and sent them to the school to create trouble and drive away Maruge. Xiaowu witnessed everything. The rascals found some sticks and stones, came to the school classroom, and started causing trouble, terrifying the children. After experiencing the storms, Maruge started helping the small thug, rushing forward and swinging his cane without a word. They started fighting, but fortunately this group of thugs wasn't stupid enough to cause a death over a few coins. Seeing the old man so fierce, they immediately lost their momentum and could only curse and run away. After fighting the thugs, Maruge sat on the bench to rest. Xiaowu was also there, making him feel guilty, but he didn't reveal that the thugs were hired by his dad. Maruge recalled how Xiaowu always wrote the number 5 wrong, so he gently taught him the correct way. Long neck, big belly, wearing a little hat. Xiaowu's feelings are complicated. This time he finally remembered the writing of number gans. In an instant, Xiaowu wanted to tell Maruge about her father's muddled past, but after a moment of hesitation, she couldn't speak up. For the next few days, no one caused trouble, and Jenny breathed a sigh of relief. On a calm afternoon, she received a letter that unsettled her. Due to Sheldong's arrangements, Jenny was transferred to an elementary school 500 kilometers away. After learning about this, the husband thinks Jenny should back down and also brings up her previous crazy remarks. Faced with her husband's gals, Jenny felt immense disappointment. She decided that if she accepted the transfer order, she wouldn't compromise. That day, Jennifer went to Maruge's house and told him about her impending transfer. Maruge believed it was all self-inflicted, causing Jenny to stay away from home and live apart from her husband. At my age, I shouldn't be learning anymore, but Jenny said it's all my choice, and I shouldn't feel guilty or sorry. As for learning, my father once said that learning should never stop until the moment you step into the coffin. This sentence has become my educational philosophy. The next day, Jenny came to school to bid farewell to the children, advising them to study hard, as that's the only way to become better. The children sang together to send her off, each presenting what they considered the best gift. No matter how maliciously the adults speculate about Jenny, the children's world remains pure. They know Jenny is a good teacher who genuinely loves them. Maruge stands outside the school, watching it all with feelings of regret and guilt. After much contemplation, he decided to do something for the children and for Jenny. The next morning, he put on his old suit, took the only sheep in the house, and stood by the road to hitch a ride, offering the sheep as fare to get to Nairobi to meet the Education Bureau leaders. On the other side, the school board arrived at the school, and the group of parents came to welcome the new principal enthusiastically. The new principal got off the car with a bittersweet smile and joined the singing and dancing crowd. Student, they were angry and sulking. Xiaowu suddenly recalled the gang of his 8th aunt, so he invitated them and picked up something from the ground to throw at the new principal. Other students picked up things from the ground and kept throwing objects from the table at the new principal to express their dissatisfaction. The new principal was completely intimidated by the momentum, realizing these were undisciplined kids that were unmanageable. He quickly got into the car and, ignoring Mr. Xiao's pleas, fled the scene. Meanwhile, Maruge arrived at the Education Bureau building to see the director, but the receptionist said the director was in the meeting and asked him to wait downstairs. Maruge waited quietly for a long time. As it got dark outside and time was running out to catch the last bus home, he took advantage of the desk staff's inattention and slipped inside. By the time the front desk noticed, it was too late. Maruge had already barged into the director's meeting room. Faced with this sudden intrusion, everyone was not very surprised, as they had already heard about Maruge from recent news. After all, the incident of an 84-year-old man attending elementary school has caused quite a stir. The director didn't kick him out but instead asked him what the problem was. Facing the leaders of the Education Bureau, Maruge was not at all intimidated. He pointed at the picture on the wall and directly said he had once, the founders stayed together in the detention camp in the UK. Without our efforts, there would be no present-day Kenya. As he spoke, he took off his shirt and turned around, revealing the numerous, horrifying scars on his back. Only then did everyone realize he was indeed a veteran of the War of Resistance. In 1953, Kenya erupted in an armed uprising against British colonial rule, led by the Mau Mau. This cost many lives, with over 1 million fighters sent to detention camps, where they suffered inhuman treatment, including Maruge. At this moment, we finally understand why he always uses a cane. The brutal colonizers shattered his kneecap, leaving him permanently disabled. Why he feels a deep anguish when witnessing bullying in schools, as it reminds him of the cruel oppression from colonizers against his people. Why he tears up at the sight of happy families, because he once had a loving wife and children, but everything was destroyed by those ruthless colonizers. Yet, despite enduring all the tortures of the world, he has never betrayed his faith. After retirement, he lived a life of poverty and never sought fame or fortune, considering defending the country his duty. But now, Jenny's departure has brought him forward again. He wants these leaders to understand that history should be. Future generations must learn from history to avoid repeating mistakes. Education is the most important aspect, and good teachers are essential for quality education. He hopes the director will carefully consider placing excellent teachers like Jenny where they are most needed. The director was persuaded by Maruge's powerful speech. A few days later, Jenny was brought back, and the kids in class stopped listening and ran out of the classroom to greet their beloved teacher. Malak smiled with relief when he saw Jenny return. Then, Maruge took out the long-preserved envelope and asked Jenny to read the contents of the letter. For this 84-year-old man, the content of the letter is too complex. Maruge fears he won't live to fully understand it. Jenny took the letter from Maruge happily, but after a quick glance, her expression suddenly turned serious. Then, he handed the letter to a biased vice principal who read it aloud to Maruge. The vice principal was filled with awe upon seeing the letter's content. It was a letter from the President of Kenya to Maruge, stating, "Dear Prisoner 4399, on behalf of the Republic of Kenya, I inform you that you qualify for compensation eligibility for the abuse endured during British colonial rule. You were imprisoned at Bora Camp from 1951 to 1953, at Langata Camp from 1953 to 1955, at Manyani Camp from 1955 to 1957, and at Bakassi Camp from 1957 to 1959. The letter details the inhumane treatment Maruge faced over the years and expresses gratitude for his unwavering commitment to the country and his courageous sacrifices for independence." After hearing the letter, Jenny was teary-eyed, and Maruge was also in tears. At this moment, he feels a sense of release. For years, he has endured great grievances and sadness, with the image of his family's sacrifices constantly replaying in his mind. He used to be uncertain if his sacrifice was worthwhile, but now he has finally found inner peace and tranquility. The dark and heavy days they once endured are gone. Their generation's sacrifices have brought peace and harmony to future generations. The president, the people, and the country have a Uzozuo 270 forgotten. This life has not been in vain. Maruge said that for the rest of my life, I will continue learning until the day I step into the coffin. The first graders are directed by Justin Chadwick, starring Oliver Litondo and Naomi Harris, co-produced by BBC UK and Kenya, released as a feature film in 2011. The film is based on a true story, with the character inspired by Kimani Maruge. He was born in 1920 and entered elementary school in 2004 at the age of 84, walking 4 kilometers to school every day despite a limp. He said, "It's very difficult. No one helps me walk. I go to and from school alone, but my desire to learn keeps me going every day." Maruge persisted for 4 years. In June 2008, Maruge had to temporarily abandon his studies due to poor health. On August 14, 2009, Maruge passed away in Nairobi, Kenya, at the age of 89. Until his death, he remained vibrant. Even while ill, he insisted on teaching. The legendary journey of this elderly student inspires many. As the oldest elementary school student and a Guinness World Record holder, he was also invited to give a speech at the United Nations on the theme of the power of education. The film not only restores the inspiring story of Maruge, an overage first grader fighting for his right to education, but also addresses various social and historical issues in Kenya. On one hand, Maruge's tragic past. It created an unbearable emotional wound for him. The film reflects the suffering of an era through the experiences of a minor character, prompting us to reflect on the hidden blood and tears behind our current stable lives. On the other hand, the depiction of these violent and ignorant villagers in the film also represents a spectator mentality. Whenever I see news about elderly people receiving education and learning anew, there are always those with a curious mindset viewing what one should do at different life stages. These stereotypes are deeply rooted, and they use public opinion and prejudice to discriminate against Maruge, wanting to deprive him of his right to an education. In the film, Maruge and the children shout for freedom. Their voices, old and young, express a shared longing for liberty. This freedom is the freedom to resist colonial rule, the freedom to learn and read, and the freedom unbound by secular judgment. Maruge's journey of lifelong learning teaches everyone that education is not about age or status. Even if the path is long and difficult, progress will lead to success. In the film, Maruge says that books have their own power, prompting us to reflect on today's fast food culture. We are attracted by various jokes and online snippets, leading to a sharp decline in our passion for reading and learning, even forgetting the meaning of books, read or wealth. But to become a warm, cultured, and thoughtful person, books may not solve all our problems, but they provide a better and more comprehensive perspective on issues. Books can purify our souls. Once finished, a book may be forgotten, like a bamboo basket carrying water in vain. Yet, after being cleansed repeatedly, the basket becomes remarkably clean. Alright, this is where we end today's movie sharing. Please like, comment and share, and I look forward to our next meeting.